Good morning. This is the Blainsville webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend of mine, Michelle Baker, who's also, you'll see, one of the most positive people I know. And she's a North Carolina licensed clinical mental health counselor for being my guest today. Michelle, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this on Facebook. And I should mention that Michelle does lots of cool things, but primarily she's involved in helping people navigate transitions in life is what she enjoys, helping them deal with college, career changes, empty nesting, aging, caregiving, to name just a few. Her counseling approach is person-centered and strength-based, grounded in empathy and collaboration. She incorporates evidence-based practices such as solution-focused brief therapy, mindfulness, and attachment. She recently joined the Asheville Art Therapy Group practice as a telehealth therapist. She works with clients who live throughout North Carolina. And so, Michelle, the question I'm going to ask you, I know you in a variety of contexts, but one of the cool things knowing about you is how you got into this whole counseling thing. And so the question I should ask you, I'm trying to think, you grew up in, what was it, Maryland? Was it
Annapolis,
Maryland?
Maryland.
Right, I remember that. And so as a kid growing up in Annapolis, Maryland, did you always know you wanted to be a counselor?
Actually, I always knew I wanted to be an artist.
Right, that I
And
know.
as after I graduated from St. John's College, I started to consider going into counseling. And then I had also, I kept putting that at bay, and I attended a program I lived in San Francisco, California for a beat, and I studied with Anna Halprin at the Tamalpa Institute, studying expressive arts therapy. And it was there that I got the taste that, ooh, mental health counseling could actually be coupled with creative outlets. And that's when it really started to pique my interest. But I did, when I say pique my interest, started to see a place for myself in the counseling field because I knew I didn't want to sit in a chair with someone across from me and go into like analysis. I didn't want to do that. But flash forward about 25 years when COVID hit, I decided to go back to school because my son was starting high school online. I knew I would drive him and myself crazy if I wasn't doing something with my mind. His dad was enrolled at Lenore-Rhine and was loving it. He was in the graduate program as well for mental health. And I thought, maybe this is the time. And that's when I went. And I'm so glad I waited because I don't know, life has a way of kind of refining oneself through experience. And then also all the research that has happened in the past 25 years around mental health. It really, it still chokes me up. It really struck me as like, this is the perfect time to be studying this. And we were all in lockdown at that time. So it was a real bonding experience for those of us who got into it at that time and understanding like, oh my gosh, the impact of, that pandemic was going to be widespread and for many years.
When you told me about this first or started reading about it, I was kind of so impressed because again, I had known you in some other lives. I had known you as an artist, I had known you as a photographer, I had known you, doing all these different things. And all of a sudden I hear you become a counselor. And so when you during the lockdown, were you doing this mostly online?
Yes. Yeah. Lenore-Rhine, as many schools, just had to pivot on the spot and provide the program that had always been an in-person program. They offered it online at that moment. And so it was really interesting to be a part of the learning curve that one university was a part of and trying to shift everything to online. But it was, I thought, wonderfully facilitated and provided the opportunity for many of us to get a education while being, in isolation at that time.
Now, how do you find it being then a student, or we'll call a returning student, studying online? What was that like for you?
I liked it. This is another part you don't know about me, but so I was a photojournalist in San Francisco, and I got hired by um, the Smithsonian back in DC. Sorry, my cat wants to visit. Um, well, it was an internship to be a photographer at the Museum of Natural History. So this is circa 1990, I don't even know, 3, 94, 95. And they're like, hey, we need you to design a website. And I'm like, I've never even touched a computer before. And they're like, we don't care. You're the youngest one here. And they gave me a stack of paper that was just code. And as a good St. John's student, I have a background in reading all sorts of things from philosophy to math to different languages to music. I sat down and read it, just pages of code. And I realized, oh, it's a language. I had studied 7 different languages, so I kind of was able to get there. And anyway, it kind of launched a career in the first wave of web development for me. So, long story short, I began working remotely in the mid 90s. And personally, I loved it because I was able to live at different places. I had clients in California, and I really liked that flexibility, especially as an artist, where I could, you know, still do my work online and meet my clients' needs as well as meet my own creative needs by not having to go into an office. I've been doing it a long time.
And it's kind of interesting because I guess what you're doing now is the same kind of thing. So you're serving clients, I guess, throughout North Carolina, and I guess they could be anywhere in North Carolina. You do this,
That's right.
do you do it phone, video, or how do you do your counseling?
Yeah, HIPAA compliant through Simple Practice. So I am with an Asheville-based group practice called Asheville Art Therapy. And that was started 14 years ago by a woman named Alexis DeCosimo. And she is a licensed um, mental health counselor as well as a licensed art therapist. I started working with her because I use art, I use creative practices or outlets in different medium um, in my therapy with people. And especially, so back to the telehealth part, after the hurricane, there was a little bit of a dip in my in-person practice. And I was also primarily working with children at that point at Rainbow School. And I loved that. And I was, working in person with kiddos, but my online adult folks, because a lot of people lost power, lost their places to live, a lot of people left. So I was able to follow some clients as they went to Charlotte or places further east, Raleigh, Durham, Wilmington, and so that's even though I did have a couple clients that I was doing career counseling with via Zoom. Um, After the hurricane, as people had to leave, I was able to just robustly embrace and keep them as clients and do so via telehealth.
Now you mentioned telehealth. So is that via Zoom or the computer, or can it be on the phone, or both?
I It can be on the phone. Our practice uses a program called Simple Practice, and Simple Practice has a video health platform that's HIPAA compliant. So I also have a HIPAA compliant Zoom account, but again, through the through my group practice, we all use Simple Practice.
And simple practice lets your client, I guess, speak to you just like we're speaking now.
That's right.
It's sort of like Zoom.
Yes, it's just like this.
And one of the cool things about it is it can also involve your cat, and you can introduce us to your cat. But also, no, I
This
love
is
it.
Molly.
I love it. But by the same token, in which I think is positive, people can have their pets as well, or they can be with their
That's
dog
right.
or cat or something like that. And talk about that process. So it's now kind of accepted in terms of counseling that people can be at home. And I don't know about you, Michelle, but I think it's fantastic because of the flexibility. It's like because of COVID, was it COVID? The pandemic, I started working with a personal trainer, and we do it via Zoom. We do it FaceTime. And what a pleasure, because I have my stuff at home and I don't have to go into her gym. And it's been great, so
Yeah,
I guess you could do the same thing with counseling. Um,
absolutely. And telehealth existed prior to the pandemic, in that a lot of people were doing phone sessions, some were doing video, but mostly phone. But after COVID happened, insurance companies really had to um, get with the 21st century and give the thumbs up for video counseling. But what they have found in the studies, and this was done pretty early on, within 2 to 3 years of the start of the pandemic, that people engaged in telehealth were able to get more personal more quickly because they were in the comfort of their own home. Now, therapy, yes, we think, oh, it can only happen when I'm sitting in the room with someone else. But think about it. First of all, mobility. Not everyone can
right.
leave their house. Also, affordability. Not everyone can take 1 to 2 hours off in the middle of their workday to travel to counseling, get their, do what they do, and then come back and act as if they didn't just process something intense, right? And then also, you're sitting in a room with a stranger and are expected to go deep quickly, especially if you're using insurance and you're only allocated 5 to 10 sessions. That's a lot to ask of someone. And what they found is when people can tune in from the comfort of their own home or a private room or private office space, um, they're they feel more, well, they're definitely more safe. They're not in the room with a stranger. Both people are physically more safe, and people are able to um, get to the concerns that they're there in the first place to address.
Well, also, as you're describing it, I kind of like it as well, because again, it's 1 hour versus 3 hours.
That's
So
right.
by the time I drive there, park, get acclimated, wait for you, whatnot, it's
Yes,
very much more productive. But
that's right.
explain a little bit, because I know your background in art, you also do art therapy this as well? How is
Creative,
that?
yes. Yes, I use art in so with my child clients, because I was working face to face, I had lots of um, yeah, puzzles, blocks, paint, crayons, paper, glue, all the things for a kiddo to get their hands in right away. But when doing telehealth, I first of all, ask the client that I'm working with if they would like to explore other outlets, because sometimes words don't get to the emotion of it. Sometimes you have to let it out a different way. And I'll ask them if they're open to either journaling, give them some writing prompts. If they're open to drawing, I'll invite them to, buy their own supplies, and I can give them some prompts while we're working together, or some prompts that they can do between the time we meet and the time we are following meeting. I also will use vocalization if they're wanting to make sound. This also with mindfulness practices, I'll bring in movement and just body sensitivity or body sensing, body awareness. So it's really more of an invitation, and some people are game right off the bat, and others it takes a while, and others just like, yeah, no, I don't, not interested, and that's fine. So as they wish, as the client wishes.
Now, this can be done, I guess, both with kids and adults. You do it with both,
I
the
do.
whole
I
gamut?
don't do tele. I don't do telehealth with children, um, because I was working with such young kids. I believe it's really important to have that one-on-one um, relationship in the same space. Also, you can get eyes on them to be able to ascertain if there's any kind of abuse going on or anything like that. So because um, there's so much more you got to take into account when working with children, I don't do telehealth with them, and I'm no longer working in person with kiddos. I'm only doing telehealth with people who are 21 and over.
And so talk then a little bit about the gamut of, we did in the introduction, but talk about some of the kinds of things you work with, let's say adults or 21 and older. I was kind of impressed. You work in a variety of different areas. What are some of those areas?
Yeah. Well, while I was in graduate school at Lenoir-Rhyne, I got to work in their career counseling department with the director there was a woman, she remains Katie Woolman, and she's just amazing. And I really felt my calling when I took her class, because for the first time in my life, my own career trajectory had made sense. And what I realized, the common thread through photojournalism, web development, and now counseling was I love being with people and their stories. Even my play was listening to people's stories and relating those stories. So I was like, this isn't so far-fetched that here I am now as a counselor, even though it's something I was interested in decades ago. But from the outside, people don't know that. So in the career counseling class, I had a light bulb moment, and it just so happened that the career development office was hiring, and I got to be an intern there, and I just loved it. So I worked with current students at Lenoir-Rhyne as well as their alumni. And so coming out of graduate school, I knew I wanted to work with people in career transitions because I've had to do it many times in my life. And sometimes by choice, but often because markets change or, life circumstances. You never know why you're going to have to get a new job / new career. And with that comes a lot of identity crises as well. If you're used to making a certain amount of money and now you're not, that's a huge blow to one's idea of self confidence. And then for new job pursuers, like new college graduates, they come out no matter what their degrees are. If they don't have work experience, they go out into the world with all this heavy expectation, like I should be getting a job right now. Well, most people kind of go into the service industry for a little bit before they can get that real high paying job or find a job in the field in which they want to be. And so really talking to younger adults about it's really a process. I one kiddo said to me, this was a 9-year-old 2 years ago. He said to me, "You're kind of like the person who pulls the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz." And just like,
Isn't that a great line?
yeah, like everyone's telling me to get with the program, but no one's telling me what the program is. And I'm like, well, the wizard was a little bit of a charlatan, but um yeah, it's important just to say, look, there are steps, and so many of us adults have gone through those steps and we've taken them for granted. We don't talk about them because we just are eager for our young adults to get a job and all the things. We think we're being encouraging, but we're missing the breakdown of, honestly, I flipped burgers for a summer, or I was a camp counselor for multiple summers, or all of these things. And the young adults just want to hear that, like, yeah, this is developmentally correct, and I will eventually get there.
What's scary, Michelle, though, I imagine, is that times change and times always change, but especially with AI is going to change the whole nature of jobs, it has already. And
Yes.
I said friends just I read about it today got laid off, because of what's happening in Washington. Can you imagine being in a career 30 years all of a sudden
Yes.
and told not to come into work on Monday or something? So that's going to
Yes.
I guess, create opportunities for you, but in some respects, it's going to make your job even more challenging because it used to be, like you said, service is a good example, service industries. Everybody could get a job in there. Well, ironically, that's the field that there'll still always be jobs. People, those jobs will be kind of protected, but other jobs, times are changing.
Mhm.
So what do you tell people in terms of being aware of AI or how their jobs and lives might change?
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I definitely have clients in that position. And having been in the early .com world where, I was on the West Coast and all of my friends and family on the East Coast were laughing, like, what's this email thing? What's this Google? What's this Yahoo? And I'm like, you all have no idea, but it's going to change your life. And all of you are going to be dealing with it, email, all of it. And they're like, yeah, no, no, no. So it
But
has happened many times. And I think the more people can read about what AI is doing and not be afraid of it, the more they can educate themselves on it and then find what they themselves value. I believe it takes, unfortunately, because in this time, once a person gets laid off, and by the time they figure out their next step, that requires money, right? Are they going to have enough money to pay the rent or pay the mortgage while they're trying to scramble and figure
or,
out
or in
what's
your case,
next?
pay for the school and also, if you need to get more schooling.
Schooling,
Yeah.
certifications, all the things. My I I do my part to provide my clients with resources that are out there for training. However, back to that education piece, there are some things that humans can still do that AI isn't doing. And but it requires a little bit of an entrepreneurial, outside of the box thinking. And a lot of people aren't taught that. And a lot of people are afraid of that. And it's not an easy answer at all. And it's not a cheap answer because a lot of these things take time. But I absolutely believe in humans' capacity to adapt and find where we are needed and where we can fit in. Um, and every client that I work with is in a very different position. So I do my best to provide resources as well as just the emotional bandwidth support as people come up against these layoffs after 30 years. I think about the steel layoffs in the 80s, all these where you had generations of people going into the same factory or the same mine, and now no. Um, there's just a lot that can completely bring a person to their knees when they lose their job and when
Well,
their industry is completely removed from the
and
market.
I guess one of the things you need to work with people is the fact that what they're doing today, they may not be doing tomorrow. And so you have to, I guess, be more flexible than ever, that you have to be willing to see what's out there. That, like you said, steel industry, you name it, that you're not necessarily going to have a job anymore. And you being a good example, me too, perhaps, for 30 years of your life. You're not going to do the same thing too. Um,
Yeah.
I'm grateful I'm no longer teaching on a full-time basis because everything has changed. Teaching is not what it was. It used to be one of the great jobs of all
That's right.
time. Not such a great job anymore. So
That's right.
um, so I kind of look, and I guess you help your clients in terms of resources, looking the kinds of fields that there will be a need for. Um,
Yeah. And in the meantime, if you have to pay your bills, I mean, I remember so 1991, a huge recession, and I was in San Francisco. I just graduated college, moved to San Francisco, had to get a job at a coffee shop. And I say it like that, had to get a job at a coffee shop because there were massive layoffs. I mean, it was a recession in 1991 that was like an official recession. And I was making coffee with two people who had PhDs in engineering, and they were older than me. And every single one of us, I know I go into a grocery store and it's kind of there, but for the grace of God go I. You see people of all different ages working in a grocery store, and you don't know what has brought them there. Perhaps they've always been in that industry. But I think it's a time in life when you have to make your bills, um, you kind of have to do what it takes. And that might mean some of these manual labor jobs that many of us who strive for white collar work were like, I didn't think I would have to do this because I have a college degree. Hence the
Yeah.
identity stuff.
Well, it's funny you say that because one of the things I personally do is even when I go into retail stores or grocery stores, I don't like going to the automatic self-check lines because it always bothers me. You're costing other people jobs, you know.
Right.
And I never got that. But you look at Sam's Club as a great example. Any other that used to have 10 lines with cashiers, and now they have
That's
two.
right.
And I hate
Yes,
self-check, that whole thing, but that's where they're all going. It's costing even
that's
more
right.
jobs, you know. Um, and so I guess people have to kind of keep that in the back of their mind, that, so that's interesting talking to you then, even in terms of transitions. I guess one of the things you do is you help people be prepared for what's going to happen in the future as opposed to just the current situation, so
To the best of my and any of our abilities, I would say I would like to think I help people prepare for the future, but I also know that there's been a few hairpin turns in my life that I thought I would be prepared for, but certainly, no, you never know what's gonna, you really don't. I'm sorry to say you don't know what's gonna gut you. You don't, and hopefully I would just like to be a part of people's resources for, because not everyone has an extended family, or not everyone has an extended peer group. Not everyone has health insurance. Not everyone has a car to be able to get to an emergency room. All of the things. But if someone has insurance and has access to the internet and can find help through things like, maybe BetterHelp or Sondermind, or even more, private groups, that a therapist certainly cannot answer or predict the future, but it's really important for us to realize we're not alone, and networking is everything in terms of reaching out to someone who might have some resources. And that could be just emotional bandwidth to hold space for someone who's grieving, or it could be actual, like, hard and true and resources, like getting people to the Department of Labor sites online. There's so much information online for people, especially right now, who are having to pivot. Back in the day, there was no internet, and you're just kind of alone in your house wondering, how the heck am I going to pay the rent? Now there's all sorts of resources online that I can do some digging for my clients and provide them, together they can do some digging and we can go through it together, suss out what's meaningful, what might work for the time being. So,
if you would, Michelle, talk about what somebody should expect if they work with you or a therapist, but in your case particular. So,
mhm.
um, when should they seek a therapist, and what should they expect working with a therapist?
Well, when should they seek a counselor? I think if you've got the little whisper in your ear, like, gosh, I could really use some help right now, I say make the call, and depending on the degree of, um, well, what is it I'm trying to say? De Yeah, just depending on the urgency of the matter. There's everything from reaching out to a private practice or group practice like what I'm in, all the way to, some of the more, like there I mentioned too, like BetterHelp and Sondermind, where you can pair up with people really quickly. But I just say as soon as you have a little inkling where you feel like you might need some help or just want to talk some ideas with someone else, I say give a call, and when first reaching out to a therapist, you most therapists will offer a 10 to 15-minute free consultation and you can see if it's a fit or not. With me, I'll tell a person what my background is, what my specialty is, and some people are like, "That's great, I want to work with you." Others are like, "Well, if they have more acute symptoms, like if they're maybe they have, drug use concerns that they themselves want to work on. That's not my specialty, but I have resources I can share." Um, or someone connects with me because maybe maybe they've been a worker and now they have to take care of their mother or their grandmother or their sibling in a capacity that they're used to being the earner, but now they've got to be the caregiver. So um, those are those are more clients that I work with in terms of changing jobs or just changing roles in life, or then even newly retired. But basically, that 10 to 15-minute consultation is really me getting to know what the person is looking for, what they're hoping to address, what they're hoping perhaps to change. And then, all prospective clients should definitely ask what their therapist's background is and maybe what their philosophy or modality is.
How long does that process take? In other words, after we speak to you for the 15-minute introduction, we come on board with you to work with you. How long should I expect to be working with you for?
Hmm, that depends on the person. I mean, seriously, it really depends on, if a person is using insurance, then it will depend on their insurance. Um, if they're a private pay individual, then it just depends on how long they want to keep going. Some people, I tend to be a little more action oriented in that um, I don't spend if people are looking to go into psychoanalysis around, past maybe familial relationships or past traumas, I'm not so much geared that way, though I can certainly hold space for someone processing that, but I definitely don't market myself as a psychoanalysis. I do believe there's a time and place for that, and there's people who specialize in that, and that's typically a much longer relationship. I like to help people kind of identify what they can do in the here and now that helps them take care of themselves or helps them take a step towards an actionable change. Um, so I really like to work with people, helping them just kind of break down. Because a lot of people get overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I have to do this big thing. Well, big things are accomplished by taking little baby steps. So I like to help people kind of let's pare this down and what can you do today? What can you maybe do by next week? But again, someone might meet with me for 3 weeks, someone might I haven't been in practice 3 years, but someone might work with me for 3 years, depending on the scope of things.
Two questions, Michelle. In terms of working with you or another therapist, the first of all, the question is, how do you go about finding a therapist?
Psychology Today. You can go on to Psychology Today and type in your zip code. You can also do a search based on concerns, issues, modalities, and you can find your person. You can even search via in-person or telehealth. So you can, Psychology Today is a great resource because also they verify that everyone has the licensure that they say they do. So you, at least you know you're reading about people who are actively licensed. So I think that's a great resource.
What about referrals from doctors as well? Good idea.
Yeah, not all doctors have them. I mean, I reached out to my, I called my GP and I said, "Hey, I'm now licensed to practice. Please put me on your referral list." You can even go to schools. Like I said, I worked in a school for a few years, and a lot of those parents are asking the health office, "Hey, do you have any counselors that work with families?" Or so I all the schools I know of in Asheville, I've called and let them know, "Hey, please put me on your referral list." So, but not all. It's worth an ask, though. Yes.
And I guess also you could ask your friends and relatives and neighbors if they are working with a therapist, if they like that person. Um,
Yeah, if they like that person. But some therapists might not take friends of their
really?
clients or relatives of their clients for ethical reasons. Some will. It just depends on how close of the connection.
And also, if you would, you mentioned your particular practice. Talk a little bit about that. So the practice is, again, the
It
name of it.
it's called Asheville Art Therapy, and they're based. They have an office. Um, I guess the office would be considered in Candler, just down Smoky Park Highway,
Okay.
not that far. And there's three practitioners there. Alexis DeCosimo founded it, started it 10 years ago, and she is a licensed counselor as well as a licensed art therapist. And her office has all sorts of art supplies and just beautiful space to get creative if you'd like. And then there's Nadia Hernandez, and she meets with people there as well. And she has access to all the art stuff. And then there's me, who does 100% telehealth. And I work with, um, so our practice does work with children as well. So I often work with parents of, um, yeah, parents who are maybe they're navigating a divorce, but they're trying to figure out how to be a support to their kiddo, or maybe a family's, maybe a child has a recent diagnosis that the parents aren't quite sure how to, where to go to learn about it. I worked with a lot of kid clients with ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. So I have a fair amount of understanding from the practitioner side, but as well as because I worked with parents uh, of those children. So some experience with parents who are um, facing learning about some diagnoses that maybe they themselves had never had to consider before.
And Michelle, let me put you on the spot with maybe one last question here. And in terms of in the future, because again, one of the things I've always admired about you is that I'll speak to you and that you're always doing something different. 10 years from now, what do you see yourself doing?
Oh, wow. 10 years from now, let's
Tomorrow,
see.
forgetting
Oh
10 years,
my
10 years
gosh.
tomorrow. I mean, do you see yourself in anything in this particular field or moving in a different direction in the
Oh,
future?
I really hope I'm still doing counseling. I know that my son's father and I have talked about hosting a group for co-parenting families, and
Very interesting.
again online. I would love to do that. And then I'm always going to be painting. So I'm hoping that my artwork is still getting bought and put into the world for people to see. Um, but I believe this is a wonderful career to age gracefully into.
It's just, like I said, I just so much enjoy talking with you because I just kind of am thinking when I speak to you next, what you'll be doing, so that's one of the cool things about you. You're always doing
I
something
do have
different.
I do have one thing that just happened that I'm really excited about that I'll share
Oh,
with you because I again never thought this would happen. Last weekend was my 35th college reunion from St. John's College, which is based in Annapolis, where I grew up, but I
and
attended the
what?
one in
Wait,
Santa
can I
Fe.
stop you a second? You
Oh,
were what, the youngest graduate ever? You were at the at
yes.
9? You graduated at 9? Wow,
No.
35 years. Wow. So go
Yes,
ahead.
35 years.
Very
And
cool.
anyway, I've just been so excited to reconnect with people in the college around this pivotal reunion. And I was invited and elected, voted to be on the Alumni Association board events committee. So I'm all excited to reconnect with people in that way. And again, it feels very much, it's not necessarily counseling, but like I said earlier, I love meeting people and hearing their stories and kind of cultivating this relationship with a fellow alumni. I would have never thought I graduated and kind of just went. And now circling back because my son's a sophomore there now and going to my reunion. Yeah, again, you never know what life is going to present to you and that you might say yes to.
And I guess that's a great way to conclude, but a great attitude to be able to say yes to things. Um,
Yeah.
some people kind of practice that as philosophy. It's kind of a cool philosophy. Just, well, no, it's just digress. I have that kind of attitude with my wife that um, she'll just ask me a question and the answer is always yes. And I'll tell you a story off there where it wasn't always yes with somebody else, but with her, it's just cool to be able to say the answer is yes.
Oh,
It's kind of a nice way to be able to live. Anyway, Michelle
yes.
Baker, if you would just one more time repeat, if folks want to get in touch with you or find out about you or get more information about your counseling, all the cool stuff you do, what's the best bet?
Yes. The website, ashevillearttherapy.com. You can read about myself or Alexis or Nadia there, but you can also call me. 828-214-9039 is my work cell number. And then there's email, Michelle at art, oops, Michelle at ashevillearttherapy.com.
And
So those are the ways.
people still use email. I still love email. I hate texting, but um, you got to go where people want to go. Anyway, Michelle Bacon,
Yes,
this is a real treat to speak to you after all these years. And I'd like to
you
thank you for
too,
being my
Blaine.
guest on the Blaine's Row webcast. Also, I'd like to thank my producer, Cappy DeSetti. And next time I'm somewhere near you or vice versa, we'll try to get together. It's been a long time, kid. That'd be
I
great.
would love that, Blaine. It was so great to see you.
Likewise, Michelle, thanks.